Hi, boys and girls. So the first thing I want to do is go over the slides that I had already previously assigned to you that most of you finished, but I still have a number of students that have not done their Cause One Road to Revolution slides. So if you have not yet completed the first 5 slides, I need you to go ahead and do that. And I've already sent you a message saying, please complete this assignment. So for the first five slides, we read about the type of government that Great Britain had, which they had Parliament. And it says that Parliament is a representative government. So the first post-it here asks you, what is a representative government? And if you go into, if you will notice while you're reading that the word representative government is bolded. So most of the time in a nonfiction text, when you find the bolded word, you will find the answer right after it. It's a form of government that has elected individuals to represent the people, and they were developed in England, that they had in England. So what is a representative government? A form of government that has elected individuals. So that's what you should have on that first post-it. Notice I went back into the text, I looked for the word, and I found it right after. That's a definition context clue. On our second page, we had another post-it down here at the bottom. It says, why do you think that the citizens want, I can't read it all because of course it is, why do you think they don't want one person in charge? And the answer to that is they don't want one person to have all the power, or they don't want to depend on one person who could possibly make a rash decision. If you have a group of people, then they're able to talk those things out. And usually it will become a more, something in my contact, a more level-headed decision. So it's smarter to have a group of people to discuss and hash things out. 2 heads are better than one, or multiple heads are better than one in this case. The third slide. What was King George III making the colonists responsible for? I had a lot of students right here write what he was responsible for. That's not what the question is. It's asking what was he making the colonists responsible for? He was making them responsible for paying off the French and Indian War. The England racked up a huge bill of costs that they had to pay back. They had a huge debt that they had to pay back after the French and Indian War. Wars are pricey. You have to pay the troops. You have to pay to feed them. You need the supplies. You need the weapons. Very costly. So they won the war, woohoo! But they have to pay all that back. So he was like, I know, I'll make the colonists do it because they're super far away and they can't really complain to me because there's no phones or emails or anything like that. So they'll pay it. So he tries to make them pay off the war. Obviously, we know now that it doesn't go over very well with them. Where did the French settle in the colonies? It tells you in here that they settled in the Ohio Valley, which was that area right in the middle of the country. Who fought in the French and Indian War? The French fought with the Native Americans, and they fought against Britain. So a lot of people just wrote Britain there. Britain didn't fight against themselves. They were fighting the French, and the Indians helped them. So that's why the British people, because we were the British colonies, so that's why the British call it the French and Indian War, because they were fighting the French and the Indians helped the French. So that's why they call it the French and Indian War. It was a lot of people just based off the name think that it's the French versus the Indians. That's not true. The Indians were actually helping the French, and they were fighting the British. And the last slide that you were supposed to complete on this post-it was who won the French and Indian War. I had some people say that they didn't know. I had some people say that it was the French. If so, you need to go back and reread because it was, in fact, the British that won the French and Indian War. And we know that because it becomes the British 13 colonies And then we have the American Revolution against the British. So what I'm going to do now is that was me going over your previous slides that you were already supposed to have handed in. For today, I am giving you 3 additional slides, and they are going to give you more information about the next cause. So the first cause was the French and Indian War, and then cause number 2 is the problems that happened after the French and Indian War. This was a continuation from the first one, so you can go ahead and answer this question. It says, what did Great Britain gain from winning the war? So what did they get? It's going to tell you right here. What did they get because they won? Then we're going to start cause number 2. So how did King George anger the colonists? So he does something that really, really makes the colonists grumpy. What does he do that angers them? And you're going to find that information here. On slide number 2, it's continuing with the things that happened after the French and Indian War. Who was being charged for the French and Indian War? We kind of just talked about that. You will find that in here, but somebody is paying for the French and Indian War, and they feel that it's unfair and unjust. Who is it? Okay. And then on the 3rd slide, it gives you a bunch of events that are leading up to the war. Why were the colonists getting angry? I'm going to make this bigger so you can see all these events. You can do this too if you're having trouble reading it when it's small on the slide. You can put it in present mode and it makes it bigger, or you can just hit the little magnifying glass and make it bigger. But these are all of the different events, and we've read about some of them in some of the things that I've assigned. There's a bunch of these are all acts. So acts are kind of like laws that the king and parliament place onto the colonists. And they slowly just make them angrier until their anger level is like here. And then they can't take it anymore. So first we have the Proclamation of 1763, and it tells you what it means. They couldn't settle in the Ohio Valley. So that's after the French and Indian War. They gain all this land, and then they're saying, oh no, you can't settle there. The Sugar Act puts taxes on these things. Colonists, the Stamp Act, they have to pay that buy stamps for all printed materials. So that kind of stinks. The Quartering Act, this one made the colonists so angry that they actually put that in the Constitution. It's part of the Bill of Rights in the Constitution that we as American citizens do not have to quarter soldiers. It means that they must be given food and housing in the colonies, the soldiers. So that means a soldier could just knock on your door and say, you have to let me stay here. Creepy, right? That's crazy. So the colonists hated that so much that it's literally in the Constitution. The declaratory tax. Parliament ended this Stamp and Sugar Act, but they said they had a right to tax the colonies for anything else. And then they did the Townshend Acts, which taxes on paint, glass, lead, paper, and tea. So then they were like just taxing everything. Then we have the Boston Massacre, the Tea Act, which is the tax on tea. Then they have the Boston Tea Party, which is 1775. So this is lasting a couple of years. They're just slowly getting more and more and more angry, and more things are happening. The Intolerable Act. So that is the Intolerable Acts are the king's response to the Boston Tea Party. He's like, oh, okay, you're going to throw it actually, I think I remember looking this up. It's like the equivalent of like $1.3 million worth of tea today. That's how much tea they threw into the harbor. He was so angry about that they passed laws to punish Boston for the Tea Party, and they closed the Boston Harbor. Nobody was allowed in or out of the Boston Harbor for quite a few months. They couldn't trade any goods. It got really, really ugly. And then after that, they were like, whoa, now he's like closing harbors. Like, what the heck? We can't trade. Like, there's no planes or trains or automobiles at the time. The only way they, get things going is ships. So they, then they decide, leaders from all of the 13 colonies decide, okay, you know what? Now we got to start having some discussions about getting rid of Britain and forming our own country. So that's where we are here, the First Continental Congress. Delegates from 12 different colonies meet and send a letter to King George, and that's kind of where the American Revolution begins. They send multiple letters after that, telling him that if he doesn't do something, that they're going to have a revolution and fight them. But the king doesn't really seem to think that the colonies are going to be able to do anything against him, because Britain at the time is the most powerful nation in the world. They have the biggest army and the biggest navy, and they're not afraid of the colonists. So they're like, go ahead. We know now, if they knew what we know now, that they didn't win. We become our own country. We are not the United States of England. So so that's where we are. And tomorrow I will we'll start cause 3, which is down here, and that's the colonists begin to unite. So there are only 3 slides, and you're just answering right here on the Post-its, just short answers. It does not have to be complete sentences. Sometimes it's just one word, like the answer that I showed you when I showed you the answers from yesterday. It was just Britain as one of the answers, so it doesn't have to be super long. They're just kind of like little notes, like we would be taking like Stop and Jots. Okay, anybody has any questions, please make sure you private message me, okay? I've had a few people that are putting stuff on the wall, and when you do that, I don't get an alert, so I don't realize that you asked me the question. If you do it in a private message, which is like when you're working on the document, on the side, there's like a little message. If you do it that way, I get an alert to my phone, and I'll know that you asked me the question, and I'll answer you within a minute or 2. But if you put it on the wall, I don't realize it's there, and then I feel bad that I didn't message you right away when you had your question. So please try and do it as a private message, okay? Any questions, private message me, and I will get back to you as quickly as possible. All right, guys, enjoy reading about the Revolution. It's my favorite. I love it. I love history, especially American Revolution.